Wolverine is slashing his way back into theaters. Find out if he sunk his claws into our hearts with Logan. This is Screen Junkies News Movie Review.
Hello? You know you gotta pay for that, right? Hey, come on.
Not okay.
I'm Roth Cornett.
I'm Spencer J. Gilbert.
And poor Dan Merle wasn't able to see Logan yet, and it's very sad for him because, man, this movie is all it was meant to be and a little bit more. What do you think?
It's so fucking good.
It is.
It's so good. I'm so happy I got to see this, and I want to try to, not let this hype train get too out of control.
I think we just did it, though.
We already did.
Bit.
I know. I won't say this is the best movie ever made, but for me, this is the best X-Men movie ever made.
I would agree with that, and I think that it's important when you're going to any of these films to judge them for what they are, right, and what they are trying to accomplish. This is a movie that was very important to Hugh Jackman. He reached out to fans before his potential last turn as Wolverine, maybe. There's been a lot of will he or won't he continue. But he wanted to know what the fans wanted to see, and they took on the base premise of Old Man Logan. Now, it's not that story, so it's not that story at all.
He's old.
He is old, though. And I think that what this superhero movie has that many superhero movie has that many don't is real stakes. And they're very human stakes.
Well, yeah, they're very simple stakes.
Yes.
I don't mean that as an insult. I think a lot of X-Men movies have a lot of plot and not a lot of character, just because you're juggling 14 different superheroes and villains in the same movie. This has really a protagonist and a sub-protagonist, and that's all you get. So they really turn, it's like a 3D movie, but the 3D is the character. You see depth and dimension to Wolverine that you never did, and to Professor X, to Patrick Stewart too.
Yeah, absolutely. That was actually, I love that version of 3D in this case. That's what I meant by real stakes. So often, and I think because we're seeing so many of these films now, it's how many times can we watch the world explode and burn, First it's a city, then it's a nation, then it's the whole world. Soon in some universes it'll be the universe, and that's great. But I find that sometimes when we narrow in and have smaller stakes, even with Deadpool, I found this was true, that basically the stakes in Deadpool were, don't call me Francis and I want my hot girlfriend, right?
Yes.
So, but that was so much more relatable.
That gave you room to explore the character and to make you fall in love with them. And then this movie, this didn't need to be a Wolverine movie. This could have been a Western, which they keep alluding to throughout the film. This is about an anti-hero getting a fugitive across the border. I don't think I'm spoiling anything. That's the overarching plot. And that could be Wolverine, that could be Shane, that could be 310 to Yuma, that could be anyone. The fact that he has metal claws and stabs a million people only makes it better.
Yeah, and they are very smartly tipping their hat to those Western tropes throughout the film. I think the other thing that is great about this film, and this was something that Superman attempted to do, and it's one of the attempts that I like, which is to remove the all-powerful nature of a superhero and give them real vulnerability. Because the thing is, when there's magic involved, and this isn't magic, but if there's magic or superhuman abilities, so often it's like that can ultimately just solve whatever their issue is. X-Men's done a pretty good job of humanizing them and giving them real challenges, but in this particular case, the challenges are internal, right?
Sure.
Because the question for Logan is, what happens when you start to fade, right? And that's a very human question, because it's not just about physical strength, it's about identity.
Yeah.
It's about identity for him and for Professor X, and what the X-Men were in the larger world is explored, and then the loss of that is explored emotionally, very emotionally for them. But it's also, what if you have immense power but can no longer control it in the way that you once could?
And Professor X's kind of B story. But I think where it works so much better than kind of humanizing and bringing Superman down to earth, this really fits the character of Wolverine as an R rating and adult themes, because even when he showed up in the X-Men, he never quite fit. I think that's why he's such a favorite, is because this was a savage killer, an animal who was trying to learn how to work with a family and try to kind of overcome his nature as a bred killer.
Yeah.
And that needs an R rating to be told properly. This isn't look, God bless Deadpool, because this movie would not exist without it.
It wouldn't,
But
yeah.
they used that R rating to be true to the character in the sense that he makes like a ton of dick jokes. And there's some gore and stuff like that.
And there's loads of blood.
But they use this R rating because a man with unbreakable metal claws would have a lot of blood flying everywhere when he fights. And this is going to be like the RoboCop for a lot of kids, where they come in thinking they're going to watch an X-Men movie or a kids movie, and from the first scene, there's just like guts flying everywhere.
Yeah, it's amazing.
This is going to make some kids grow up real fast.
Yeah, you are alluding to not the remake, but Verhoeven's original RoboCop, one of my all-time favorite movies, I assume, yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. And just to clarify what I meant specifically Christopher Reeve's Superman 2.
Oh, got it.
When he becomes human. Yeah.
Sure.
So, because the thing about this is physically, it also, what I love about this is that there's a physicality to it that mirrors what's happening for them. This is a very different Professor X than you've ever seen before, and quite a wonderful way, but he still has that heart. He still has the soul of that man in him, which makes it all the more heartbreaking to watch what he's lost.
Yeah, I don't think this is tipping too far into spoiler territory, but his character question is he has the most powerful mind in the world, and he's starting to lose it.
Yes.
So that's a really interesting take on the character, and like something that has an emotional truth in watching your grandparents get old and maybe be a little dementia riddled. And when you have the ability to kill someone with your mind, that's a really dangerous and interesting story thing.
It is, and it's like watching Still Alice in the superhero world in a way. I mean, it's really, really heartbreaking. But then also Wolverine just sort of scarring and things like that. The older that we get, the more that we lose, right?
Yeah.
And the more that we scar emotionally. And this is true for them, right? Like they have lost a lot over the years, and they would, but just by nature of who they are. It also grounds it in a world, in a post-apocalyptic world, but it's not post-apocalyptic in the way that it would be
Days of Future Past of
Days
like
of Future Past
melting people's face.
No, it's not. So it's not post-apocalyptic in the sense of in a way that it's hard to touch and feel, that's so heightened, but it's more things have gone really awry. You don't know why exactly.
It's 2029, I think they said, and there's stuff like driverless cars and things look a little different, but you can see that we're like a stone's throw from the reality that they put in that film.
Yeah, and I want to caveat that. It's not post-apocalyptic, so I don't want you to go in thinking that it's that. It's just a world that's, and particularly the world that they live in, which is interesting about the movie. It's possible that the larger world outside of their insulated environment in the world of this film is fine. But the world that they're living in is damaged and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And there have been consequences down the line for the world at large.
Yeah, it seems like it's kind of like a snow crash, like not cyberpunk, but like corporatism run amok. Because there's a lot of big security corporations and food corporations that they have, which is a whole other thing, that they have run-ins with, but it's not like the government is kicking in doors.
Exactly. And the other, which is, again, it grounds it, right? Because it feels just to the left of our reality here, which is one of the things that I think makes this movie work so well. I also want to talk about the little girl who plays Laura / X-23, Daphne Keane. Wow, what a discovery. I mean, the acting, here's the thing. Across the board, the acting in this film is really extraordinary. You already had two great actors in Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart, but they're really able to utilize their skills here in a way they haven't fully been able to before with these characters. Stephen Merchant is great in this movie.
Love that guy.
But this little girl is the discovery. Like, if there's one thing that could have...
Yeah, I think that the movie sets her up to succeed. She doesn't talk for most of it, but she looks great, and there's nothing better than a little girl who kills grown trained men sent after her.
There's something very satisfying about it.
Very satisfying about that, because who would ever want to harm a little girl? Oh, you've done messed with the wrong one.
You sure have.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that R rating also applies to how they utilize her, not just in the sense that she is also very violent and dangerous. And it's speaking of the animalistic, she really embodies that idea of the animalistic side of Wolverine. She looks like a feral little wolf cub.
Yeah, kids are nuts, and then when you give them spikes on their hands, they get even crazier.
Yeah, Jackman also took a pay cut in order to secure that R rating. That's how important this was to him to get it right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything we didn't like about this movie?
Oh, good question. I had a quibble with
Quibble away.
but I don't. I actually am concerned that it would be somewhat of a spoiler for me to reveal my quibble.
Okay.
But I will say this: it has to do with accents and a lack of consistency among regional dialogue.
You know,
dialects.
that's a little thing that we could do for.
It's very tiny.
For me, I think the only thing preventing this movie from being great to perfect was a stronger antagonist. The bad guy in this movie, or bad guys, are pretty thin compared to your heroes. Speaking of accents, he's like a hipster Colonel Sanders, the guy he's going up against this whole time. But when this is really a character study about Logan, I mean, his enemy is himself.
Yeah.
It's him overcoming his own demons. But I wish if we could have thrown in, because the X-Men have some great villains, an old version of one of them. I think it could have risen above.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, I agree with you, but I also do feel that this was more about them and exploring the idea of the X-Men facing the same challenges, and more so because they live in a heightened reality, that every human being does and will, in a way, right? Like, we're going to get old and we're going to feel weak, and our identity is going to be challenged unless we die early, and that'll be fine too. This also had the vibe of Paper Moon. There was a great relationship between Laura and Logan in this film that never went to a place that I no longer buy it, but it was incredibly emotionally resonant.
Yeah.
I'm surprised at how much, and I think it's going to challenge other comic book movies to say, can you live up to this standard? Though again, it's not about chasing it. I don't want every other movie to now chase what Logan did.
Well, I hope they take the right lessons from it, which is to just use that artistic freedom and that R rating, if you have it, to be true to the character and what people like about the character. This is a character-driven movie, and when you nail it, like in Deadpool, people love it. I hope this makes $1 billion.
I hope it makes $1 billion, and I hope the lesson is ultimately just like you do, that, look, Deadpool and Logan could not be more different movies, but what they have in common is that they're allowed to be what they are without reservation, with full commitment. It trusts the audience enough to not spell things out for us ad nauseum.
There's no monologues about the timeline crossing, and Magneto doesn't change another bridge into a monument again. Like, it's nothing like any of the other X-Men movies, and it's better for it. It actually makes me angry that the X-Men movies aren't better now.
Yeah, well, I will say that down the line, we should talk about timelines and things like that, because I want this movie to have the stakes of existing and not being in some parallel reality that is now disconnected from the rest of the movie
I don't mind it being
universe.
a one-off.
You don't?
Just let's dip into these characters' lives for, one crazy week at a time, and they don't all need to cross over, because I don't think Fox is capable of handling it and juggling it.
All right, well, we'll dig into that when we do a full spoilers review. For now, I would say highly recommend, as a comic book fan, as a movie lover, as a enjoyer of entertainment at large, go see this movie. Spencer?
Yeah, 6 claws up.
6 claws up! Yeah. And 4 on my arm if I'm X. Yeah. Great. Thank you guys for watching. Let us know what you think, what your hopes and dreams are for Logan, and when you see it, what you thought of the movie in the comments below. And stay tuned for plenty more on Logan on Screen Junkies News. Click here for more awesome Screen Junkies news, and click the logo to subscribe.